welcome to the Recognise podcast, a place where we share stories that make life meaningful and explore what it's really like to live in someone else's shoes. On today's episode, we have Alexander Dragonetti. Alexander has become well known in recent months for appearing on the widely popular BBC show The Traitors, and is also a former British diplomat. He also sparked headlines in sharing about his late brother in a segment on The Traitors, and subsequently inspired £46,000 in charity gifts to be donated to the charity MenCap. We are so excited to have him speaking with us today. And before we jump in, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date on all of our Recognise podcast episodes. Alexander.
Hi.
Welcome to the Recognise podcast.
Thank you.
This is your first ever podcast.
Yes.
So I feel totally honoured that you
Well, I saved it for this one.
Oh, come on, that you come on the What's It Like podcast. I like to start every podcast by recognising our guest. And when I was thinking about you, I kind of 3 words came to mind.
Uh-oh.
And this is the first word.
Maybe pause recording and we can come back.
Yeah, you might disagree. But the first word I kind of had for you was that you are so deeply kind. And look, I'm going off mainly what I've seen on TV.
Yeah, if people only knew.
But I do think it's something that really shines through. And particularly I am referring to your time on The Traitors.
Yeah,
but I think that speaks so much more. You are clearly such a kind person. And I think in this world, like when you can be anything, be kind.
Thank you.
Yeah. I also really see a lot of humility in you. I don't know if you've ever described yourself as that, but I think again, that felt like that was something that really came across, and something that you were, whether it was like getting off the train to put someone else before yourself, or just choosing to not exert strength or be annoyed in an argument when you so could have. I think there's real power and in humility in holding back. And
thanks. I also believe that's true.
Again,
there is a power in it.
Yeah.
Whether I get it right, I don't know, but I agree with you.
But again, amazing trait that you have. And the final thing is that, and this maybe speaks to kind of what a lot of your career has been, but you are so clearly a peacemaker. And I think in this world today, again, we need peacemakers more than ever. It's such a gift. And I just think I'd love to know more about that, which we can come on to in a bit. But honestly, thank you so much for being here. For people that don't know you, didn't watch The Traitors, can you just share in your words who you are and what's important to you in life?
After that introduction, that's hard, isn't it? I can't top that. I've sort of been lots of different things, because I started out as a secondary school teacher in a sort of tricky North London school. We had a kind of full-time policeman in the school, and I ended up teaching about 7 different subjects from 11 to 18 years old. That was the kids, not me. Yeah. I wasn't a teacher from 11 to 11. So yeah, it's just way ahead of myself. And then I did that for a couple of years, and at the end of that, I had a offer from the Foreign Office to join, and they said, well, either you take it or by now, after a couple of years you lose it. So I took it, and then I went away overseas for a number of years, and then I came back, and so I feel like there's lots of different parts to my life, I guess. So who am I? And then sort of before all that, I had this sort of slightly different life where my brother was alive, and that was hugely important to me. And I've talked about that, so I won't go into it here, but that was a very different set of things I valued. So I feel like what I valued has changed in terms of the content, but underneath that, the sort of principles you talked about hopefully have remained relatively consistent. And a lot of that comes from those early years. It's difficult to look after special needs kids for a week and take them to the toilet and clear up, wet mattresses and stuff, if you haven't got a bit of humility about you.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's probably so grown in that time as well. We're going to come on to kind of more of that. Let's get on to your What's It Like. Let's go straight in. So,
I know I'm not allowed to talk about the What's It's Like. So
yeah,
I tried and I failed.
Well, this is the thing. We have to brief everyone to not, because as people listening will know by now, often everyone goes into them right away, and I'm like,
yeah, people are the worst.
Oh, we've done it all now. We can go home. Have nothing to ask.
Yeah.
So hold it in, but we've given some good teasers for people.
Okay, good.
So it's coming.
Okay,
people
the right
on the
balance
edge.
then.
sitted.
Yeah, there's
or,
still more.
Or listening.
There's more
more
to come.
So yeah, your first What's It Like?
I've got depth.
This could be a podcast in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Is what's it like to be on the Traitors?
Do I just get like blank canvas on that?
You go.
Okay.
I just want to hear your first reaction,
sub-questions.
And then I've got a lot of stuff. I've got sections for these. I have sections.
Yeah. Honestly, it's such a whirlwind because there's kind of two parts. There's like before it becomes public, when it's just a game and it's a really fun game. And, because I stepped off the train and I hoped I'd come back, but I wasn't sure. And I thought, well, even if that's the end of the experience, it was still a lot of fun. There's, in some ways, there's not a lot riding on it, right? You do your best. You hope to get as far as you can. I mean, if you win the money, incredible, but it was 1 in 25 or whatever it was. And you think, I'm so lucky just to have this experience and to go through all of these things. And then there's the sort of, and you sit on that for however many months, and pretty much nothing happens. And you are just, I was very close to the rest of the cast, and we all went away for a weekend together.
Did you play Traitors?
No, we'd had enough. I think there's no more room for disagreement and distrust amongst our group. We kind of done that. So we did that, and then suddenly it all ramps up in January. And of course, because I stepped off in the first episode, for the first week and a half, I wasn't really in the show. And then it all was compressed into that sort of 2.5 week period where there was such a lot of interest in the show, which is brilliant. And I love that about it, that it connects people. It connected me with my friends. I watched every episode with like 20 people. It connected me with people I haven't seen in a while. Yeah. And it connects sort of the wider public, right? People talk about this stuff when they come into work. They make a coffee and they chat about the show.
Why do you think it connects so much?
I think partly it's because it's people that are just like you. They're people trying to make the best of a tricky situation. And you kind of see something of yourself in that. I think partly it's always easy to think you'd do it differently. You come in, you're like, you see the way Alexander did that. Man, what an idiot. And I think we all do that. And I also think there's a part of the Traitors which is kind of underrated. Everyone says, it's all about distrust. But actually, it's sort of not. It's almost like a heartwarming story where out of the 25, 22 people are desperately trying to build trust in a really diverse group of people that they've never met before, where 3 of them are traitors, and you've got 22 people desperately trying to build trust in really difficult circumstances. And the game makes that even harder. And I think that's quite heartwarming, actually. You've got these people desperately trying to build trust. So this whole thing that it's all about sort of backstabbing and stuff, that's not really true. It's true for about 3 people in it. Or 4 or whatever it is.
Yeah. And did you find that when you were
quite connective,
when you were in it, that sense of people not trusting you? Because there was a couple of people I could definitely think of that definitely referring to. Didn't trust you. I think this was our most emotional. I'm a part of this now, but it was the most emotional Traitors series ever. And you really, I think, grounded the whole show because you didn't particularly get that emotional.
Yeah.
So then,
true.
But why? How did you find that when people didn't trust you?
I think most of all, I saw it as a game, and I thought, I'm here to I did this because I want to have fun. My aims of going in were to try something new. I love new experiences, and I just thought this is one of the most unusual things I could do. Go away to this castle, have everything taken away, not be able to contact anyone, and just play the game for as long as you're in. And the second thing was the connectivity, like the idea of having that group of people who I would connect to and hopefully know for a long time with this incredibly sort of intense experience. And I got that. I think not being trusted just felt like part of that game. Like, it's perfectly reasonable for people not to trust me. By the end of the game, I stepped off the train, I'd come down from the cages. Claudia had said, one of them might be a traitor. Yeah. I was the last surviving member of the death match.
The boat.
I might have voted myself out. So I've got a lot of sympathy, and it's perfectly okay for people to not trust you. I think the way that people do it is important, and you saw me at the round table a couple of times coming back and saying, actually, okay,
it is a game, guys.
The how is really important. Let's never make this personal. But of course, if you suspect me, totally fine. So that was, I think. But I think, you said I wasn't emotional, and I completely get that, but I'm not sure it's entirely true. I think I was pretty emotional, but I spent a huge amount of energy trying to process those emotions and try and do the best I could with them. Again, at the round table, you can see me once or twice almost pausing for a breath, and I'm like, okay, like beat. Okay, I'm going to choose how I respond and try and respond in a constructive way, where in the moment, obviously there are emotions and it is emotional in there. So I think I was emotional, but just I probably used a lot of internal energy to try and make it more of a positive thing. I'm not saying I always got it right, but yeah.
Did you apply for the Traitors?
Amazingly,
so
nobody plucked me out of social media.
So you did your
with my 98 followers.
Yeah, well, it could have happened.
Yeah,
so you applied, and then you got an email one day, or did you get a call?
Yeah, I'm not allowed to talk about the exact process, but I did get a call, and then
where were you when you got the call?
And etc. etc. I was just at home. I was just it was like, I think it was like Friday night or something. It was like completely unexpected. It's sort of that,
because you probably apply and then you forget about it.
Exactly. And I actually, I applied on like the last night of the deadline with about 3 hours to go. I did 1-2 takes, I think, of the video I sent in, and just sent it in with sort of some written answers. And I was like, well, I'll never hear back from that. And of course, that's how everything starts, right? But you don't expect to hear back. And then you sort of I have a chat with them, and that was I loved it. I thought everyone who worked on it was just the nicest people, and it was the most incredibly like friendly, I have used this word already, but connective experience. I thought, wow, these people feel like my kind of people. And then it just kind of kept going from there. And however many weeks later or whatever, then they're like, well, actually, we'd like you in the final group, which is it's such a surprise, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just you never think that.
Well, you tell me.
Yeah, it is. It is a surprise.
Because there must be thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that apply. What was because I know on the application you have to say a lie that you've told. What was your lie?
My lie was one. I've said it once before, but a long time ago, I tried to get out of a date by claiming that I had a prescription. I'm embarrassed to say this, a prescription that I had to pick up. And it just snowballed and snowballed and snowballed until I was actually at the counter with the person. And I had to get my wallet out and pat myself down and be like, oh my God, where's this gone? It was awful. To talk about like a good reason not to lie.
So she came with you to pick up the prescription?
Yeah.
And there was nothing to pick up?
No. And
did she ever know? Well, she'll know now. She was going to find out.
No. Okay, fine. I'll stop there. But I ended up buying medication. That was the worst bit for something I didn't have. It was...
That's commitment.
Yeah, well, it
like that.
Teaches you not to lie. So if anyone's listening, it's like...
Okay.
Don't do that. It's really stupid. I was young.
This is so good. Okay,
bad.
Let's whiz through some of these before we move on.
Really bad. Thanks for whizzing through it before we got to what the medication was. I appreciate that. That's nice.
What was it for? Yeah. Did you want to be Did you want to be a faithful or a traitor?
It changed, actually. I originally wanted to be a faithful. Would you believe when I applied, I hadn't actually seen the programme, but don't tell anyone. And when they rung me back, they were like, so what do you think of it? And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. That's awkward. Yeah. Because a friend of mine sort of was like, oh my God, I think you'd love this. And I think you'd be really, really, what's the word?
Good.
Yeah. It would be a really good fit for you. And she was like, and the other...
Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. Is that shade on me? I don't know. And I think the thing my friend was, she works in sort of around TV, and was like, the thing about that show is it's kind.
It's a wholesome show.
It's a wholesome show.
Very wholesome.
So I would recommend. Initially, when I didn't know that much, I wanted to be a faithful. I thought the idea of lying for the whole show was going to be like...
Really hard.
I find it really tiring to lie. It's not my sort of default thing. I have this quite a strong internal set of values, and when I break them, I don't know, I feel a bit uncomfortable. But then the more I found out about it, I was like, well, it's a game. And I thought it would be really fun. So I sort of made a bit of a last ditch pitch to be a traitor, but obviously the way I came in made that a lot harder, I think. I think it's the one experience I didn't have in the show, isn't it? I mean, I was so lucky. I went through so many different bits of it. I would love to have seen the Traitors Tower, but
well, kind of related to that, is there anything you do differently where you to kind
I'd
of
love to have
it?
become a traitor towards the end.
Yeah.
I mean, like Charlotte.
Yeah.
What a change, right?
Yeah.
Although I don't know, I'd probably have been kicked out even quicker, I guess. People would have been like, yes, obviously he was. And then I'd have done a Freddie and been there for 24 hours and I'd been, oh dear.
Poor Freddie.
Poor Freddie.
R.I.P.
Poor Freddie. Yeah, I think faithful Freddie. What was I going to say? So yeah, I would like to have done that. I think I would say if you ever play a game that's similar, don't leave at the start or unilaterally throw yourself out of the game. I would say that is a bad
So you
choice.
wish you'd not done that?
I wouldn't recommend it to anyone else. I think it's daft. I think there's always something about the original group, and especially towards the end of a game, people kind of tighten up to the people they know best who are from the start. There's something quite psychological about that. And I think you're always playing catch up, trying to reinsert yourself into the group. I think that's hard. Although I made some really strong connections in there, but I just think there's something under pressure. People snap back a little bit. For me personally, the way it played out, I'm over the moon. Like, I got to experience so many different bits of the game. I was incredibly lucky to make it to the final. So no, I wouldn't change anything about my experience. Also, well, maybe we'll get onto it, but okay, I didn't win, but people have now donated more than the total prize fund to
it's
MenCat.
more than that.
It's more than 95k now.
Oh wow, I got that wrong then.
No.
Wow.
You were right, but it's just people are just brilliant. They keep donating.
Yeah, the show's amazing for bringing exposure and bringing publicity.
I mean, fantastic.
Totally.
So that's
and
a
I love that you used
version.
it for that as well.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
And I didn't intend to use it for that. I was quite honest in saying, well, obviously I was honest, but I was quite honest in saying that's my motivation. Like I love that stuff, and I never thought it would go any further than that square table conversation. It was just like, it felt incredibly intimate. It's weird because there's like 20 camera people around you, and but it also felt incredibly intimate with these 8 people sharing, because you've been through a lot, and sharing some of the things that are most important to you is quite powerful. And so that you kind of naively, I guess, kind of in your head, you're like, well, this sort of stays between us. I know that sounds ridiculous because it's obviously on
I guess it's
TV,
a sense of you're caught in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. But I never intended it to go that much further than the fact that it caught on and has inspired people to do such amazing things on raising money and awareness is incredible. But anyway, it's not this section. But yeah, I can see the look in your eyes. You're like, no, not here. But anyway, it's like a version of winning, right?
Totally. And I guess you kind of touched on something there. Again, we'll go through these semi-quickly, but of kind of how the show is made. I think people will be quite surprised to hear that there's 20 people around in that moment. What else would surprise people about how the show is made that you're able to share?
Yeah, we're told, I've already broken that, haven't I? We're told that we're not allowed to to talk about how the show's produced. It's the production magic, and I think that's right. I think it's the kind of thing that people would love to know in the moment, and then the second you tell them stuff, they're like, oh right,
keep
okay.
the mystery.
And then suddenly it's not as exciting. It's kind of like Christmas, isn't it? If you talk about that. But yeah, it is obviously filmed. my 20 people point there are. I can reveal that it is filmed. There are people with cameras.
That is a revelation.
You heard it here first.
Shock horror. So I can't ask you then, when you got off the train, where were you? And what did you do for because surely that would have been a few days.
Yeah, I think the official line is I spent 6 days travelling the sort of wilds of Scotland in a rail replacement service. Yeah. Just 6.
Absolutely,
I mean, the
iconic. So
the
clever.
Camping in the fields and the sort of huddling together for warmth in the carriage. It was a lot. 6 days. Yeah, being pulled by these giant traitors. But that's the kind of resilience that we show. No, I can't say where I actually was. Wow. But we ended up in the cages, didn't we? So that was a lot.
So were you in a cage?
I didn't expect that. I can confirm I didn't expect that's where that would end. People have said to me, did you get out the train knowing that you'd come back or knowing what would happen next? Absolutely not. No.
Okay. So, sorry, something I just thought about as well, related to that was, the bit when, is it a coffin? You're on the lake in the coffin.
Yeah.
And my
Cages,
theory,
coffins.
I know you can't answer, but maybe we'll pick up your face. But my theory of that, who was it who got rescued first was it Mina? Someone came out the coffin to begin with before they found you, and they were
Anna,
and she was shaking.
She was shaking. I know.
Do you know what I thought? I thought, babes, you've just a producer's literally just popped you in there for 5 minutes.
I can neither confirm nor deny that's true.
But great acting from her.
Well,
I mean,
maybe she felt like that. I don't know. And if she did, like, total respect for that. But
she was like, I've been here all
it
night.
did me no favours at all, because I didn't know that that's how she'd come out. And I came out and I was like, hey guys, lol. And probably I shouldn't say lol. I'm too old for that.
LOL. No. Are you a millennial?
It's ironic if you're listening. When I came out the coffin, it was like, I had a really good time. It was like, I thought, it's quite a sort of camp show, isn't it? It's just like got this sort of, I don't know what the word is.
It's got drama.
It's drama.
Theatrical,
sort of, yeah. And I love that about it. And so when I came out, I was like, this is just fun, right? I've just been in a coffin on a boat in the middle of a lake and you've pulled me in and you've had to drag me out. And that's kind of really fun. And the response I got was just not at all what I expected.
No.
People were just so suspicious. Everyone was sort of like a little bit of the Spanish Inquisition as soon as I got out. And I didn't understand that at all. And I think one of the things watching it back is clearly the way I sort of popped out was very different to Anna. So,
but I also don't understand why, if anyone is listening to this and remembers, I don't understand why a traitor would have put themselves into that position, because the stakes were too high to go and play that death match and risk being kicked out. You had no control over that. So as a viewer watching, it was like, why would there be a traitor?
Well, I think two things.
Okay.
Sorry, you probably don't want a proper answer to this, but
give us a 10-second answer.
One.
And then
one
I'm
is
gonna
that
ask...
2 of the 4 traitors were in the dungeon last year, if you remember season 2. I think that's sat in people's minds. And secondly, I think a traitor could have gone through the death match but would not have been killed.
Okay, so there would have been a, like,
so I don't think a traitor can like exit themselves. They can't murder themselves, right? So I think,
who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
I'm excited to see what twist there might be next year. I think every year they bring in something new. I'm quite a fan for public voting, but then there would need to be a live element. So not sure how that would work. But look, before we go to your next What's It Like, I'd love to know what it's been like becoming known so quickly, because I imagine that has been a surreal experience from going on something and then coming off, and suddenly basically the whole of Britain knows who you are, because it's all we talked about for a month in January.
Yeah.
That's all we talked about.
I do love that. I was saying, like, I love that connection that it brings. It's like very few things are not live, but what's linear TV, I think it's called. They run for everybody at the same pace. It's not on demand when you want it. It's when it's same for everybody. But it's been a lot. It's been great. I'm very, very lucky. The show connected with a lot of people. Brilliant. It's also been quite a lot. Because, mid-January I had 98 followers, and now I have more. I've had to get to grips with social media. Still don't fully get it. So, give me a little slack if you see something really rubbish. And, there was a period afterwards where people would kind of almost, people are generally absolutely lovely, but also every so often someone will sort of grab you from behind or whatever in the street, or like, you're with a parent or something, and people will like, come up to you. So it can be quite, especially when sort of there's like a bit of a, if people are sort of out drinking or whatever, it can be quite intense at times. And that's something that nothing of this sort of prepares you for. You've no idea how the show will land. It's been quite a thing. And sometimes you have to sort of figure it out as you go along a little bit. I said this earlier, sorry, we need to move on, I know, but I said this earlier to somebody, you get kind of used to people saying, oh, could I take a picture? And it's sort of like, yeah, of course. And someone came up to me the other day and they were like, oh, my mum is such a big fan. It often happens. It's not the person who's a fan, it's somebody else. It's totally cool, but it seems common. And they were like, oh, my mum's a really big fan. And I was like, oh, would you like
that's
to do
just an excuse. But
I don't know, but it's
my
often
mum
a bit weird. Like,
such a fan.
They'll say, like, I'm not a fan, but this person is. And you're like, okay, but thanks for sharing that. Cool. But this person was like, I was like, oh, would you like to do a selfie or do a little video for your mum? And they were like, no, God, no, I really don't want that. It's like this guy who's like trying to push selfies or little videos of themselves onto the unsuspecting public. Like, hey, come, selfie, me. It's dreadful. I obviously don't want to be that guy, so I'm sorry. I wasn't pushing a video of myself.
I don't think you would be.
No.
But how has your life changed? How would you say your life has changed since going on the Traitors?
It's become busier. I mean, I've been incredibly lucky. There's been, there's stuff like, there's the sort of shiny things like, going to like a premiere or something like that. which was super fun. I went to Bridget Jones.
Oh,
I
epic.
know, right? I know.
Best one yet, I thought.
Oh, it was really good.
I was absolutely sobbing.
I thought it was great.
They left in just, I thought it was a fun Valentine's Day night.
Yeah.
This is fun.
But you thought it was going to be like
it was therapy. It was 2 hours of therapy.
It was just a fun film, but it was a lot.
It was a lot to process.
I really liked it. I really liked Emma Thompson and Hugh Grant. I thought they were really funny. And very
just
dry.
divine.
Yeah,
I mean, the best
great.
of British, yeah.
Really good. Anyway, to get to do stuff like that, I've got to do stuff like the sort of special needs or learning disability stuff. It's incredibly important to me, and I've been super lucky to have an opportunity to do that. And I plan to do more. I think it might be more by the time this comes out. It's something we're working quite hard behind the scenes on. And I've also got this. I've been doing a series on radio, which has been like brilliant.
Classical FM.
Classical FM, yes. That's it.
Love it.
Classic FM. Yeah, it's been great. I mean, they've been so helpful. I've just like helping me learn how it all works. Wow. They were like, "Oh, have you done radio before?" I was like, "No," and they were like, "Okay, well, here's a contract." I was like, "Well, thank you so much." So yeah.
Just taking a little pause to tell you about Recognise, who brings you the Recognise What's It Like podcast. At Recognise, we give recognition to individuals, charities and causes to raise awareness, spark conversations and bring solidarity. Our award-winning jewellery brand brings together beautiful jewellery with amazing causes, and 100% of profits from our iconic statement pop-ons are donated to our charity partners. Head to www.recognisestore.com to find out more and use the code Alexander15 to get 15% off your first purchase.
Very good.
That goes nicely onto your next What's It Like? Yeah. And this, as I talk to you, I'm beginning to learn a lot more about you. And things are piecing together. You're definitely someone that has done many things, as you said at the beginning. And your second What's It Like is what's it like to adapt to new situations and be resilient. Because I'm just thinking classical FM.
Yeah.
Traitors, charity work.
I like new things.
This obviously, this one that you picked does massively apply to your former career as a British diplomat.
Yeah.
For people that don't know what a diplomat is or think that you're a spy,
yep.
which I think we all did, or we thought of like the diplomat on Netflix and had just a picture pre-made for us. What is a diplomat and what did that look like for you?
It's a really good question. It's one of those sort of professions that's got quite an image in the public mind of like we give out Ferrero Rochers and sort of, I don't know, dinner parties, something like that. But actually it's not really that well understood, I think. So you do two things. One of them is that you explain what's happening in a foreign part of the world back to the UK.
Okay.
These people are in power. These things are happening in society. These are the things we expect to change over the next few months. So you tell Britain what's happening. Second thing is, then the other way, the centre goes back to you in a country and tells you what they want to try and influence. And that's your job, to try and influence in British interests to make the things happen that we think are important. And that could be anything from human rights, which Britain thinks are very important, to economic diplomacy, of trying to make Britain more successful economically, or it could be political things that we want, like we want the Middle East peace process to be successful, for example. So it could be any of those kind of things.
And where have you been based in your kind of career with that?
So I've been in Asia. I was in Pakistan for some time. I was in the Middle East for a long time. And I was in Northern Africa and also in Ireland, weirdly. And then I spent a few years in London. As I say, you have to spend some time back at the centre.
All over? All over,
yeah.
And what's the kind of favourite place that you've lived?
I actually love the Middle East. I mean, they're all great in their own ways. I'm not sort of, they're all great. But yeah, the Middle East was my first posting, and I was working
honeymoon period.
Yeah, everyone's first posting kind of marks them, and it's your sort of first big time away from the country, and everything is new. There's such a lot of information being fired at you from like the different languages, different people on the streets, different cultures, different geographies, all of that. Yeah,
And do you have to learn the languages kind of where you go, or have a pretty good grips on them?
Yeah, there's two types. You can sort of delve properly into, so like learning Arabic is, a couple of years as a game. I've got a friend who speaks fluently and he's like, yeah, the first 20 years is the hardest. And that is a big investment of time. I never became like fluent or particularly good. I learned sort of a sort of very, very basic level. But, I worked in the Middle East peace process and that is, for right or wrong, conducted in English across the sort of, for a lot of it is conducted in English. We have some excellent speakers who engage with groups in local languages, of course. So yeah.
And what sort of skills do you need to be a diplomat? You've chosen to talk about resilience and adapting to change. I guess there are two skills. Why did you choose that? And is there anything else that I guess you've either learned by being a diplomat, or kind of like, you absolutely need this, and this is...
Yeah. It sounds like sort of a pitch to be on the Traitors. What could I bring from being a diplomat? Yeah. I think a few things. I like to think you just get practiced at engaging with quite a diverse group of people from different backgrounds, different parts of society, whether that's sort of tribal groups or top politicians or vulnerable groups that are at risk. You engage with all of these people, and I like to think that this is kind of like where listening is just so much more valuable than talking most of the time, and I'm truly trying to understand where people are coming from. And as you say, in the way society is going a little bit, there's a lot of talk. Everybody's angry. Not everybody.
A lot of people are
online is angry.
Yeah.
And people are quite polarized and quite tribal. And actually, if you can sit in the middle of that and absorb and listen rather than join that sort of shouting,
Wow.
I think that's super valuable. So listening and engaging with different groups. I think adaptation, as you said, like going to different cultures, and I suppose decision making under pressure is important. It's part of adapting, but that you can absorb lots of inputs at the same time and try and make a best guess at what the good thing to do is quickly.
Yeah. I wonder whether that might be one. Like, how do you stay calm in that moment? And I guess more broadly, for people that might be listening that, probably aren't going to relate with being a British diplomat. But it sounds like a lot of these things. And I really want to understand more from you, because I think a lot of us can learn. How do you stay calm? How do you adapt to things that are new, uncertain, unknown? Because it very much applies to your time on the Traitors as well, or anything you're doing, right? So I guess those things that you seem really good at.
Well, thank you.
I've asked you a million questions there, but let's start with, how do you stay calm when everyone else is losing their cool?
I'm not sure I always do. I think I once heard somebody say, like, always take the old into the new. And I think that's really important. Remember where you've come from, remember the things you're good at, and take them into that new situation. So you're never completely unanchored, right? There's always something of the past, a script that you can take in. It might not be the perfect script, but it might be 40% or 30%. So there's always stuff you can take in. I think when you're in an unknown situation, you just do the next best thing. Do you remember? It's probably not the right reference for a serious conversation about diplomacy, but you've seen Frozen 2. There's a song with Anna, and she says, she sings about doing the next right thing. And I love that approach. I think it's really smart. You do the next right thing. If you don't know, if you haven't got the whole plan or you can't see the big picture, fine. Do the next best thing. And that's all you can do in life. Ultimately, you can affect process, not outcome, right? Do the next thing, keep working at it, and do the next best thing. Ultimately, the outcome is outside of your control most of the time, so don't worry about the outcome. It's a bit like doing a job interview, right? You can't decide if they give you the job, but you can prepare well for the interview and you can give your best interview. And if you get the job, you get the job. If you don't, you don't. That was never in your control. But what was in your control is the prep. So, same thing, do the next best thing that's in your control. And I think that's really important. Control what you can control. And then the final thing I'd say is, there's actually a lot of research on this. The decisions you take are generally less important than what you do with them afterwards. So fine, some of the stuff you did might have been right, some of the stuff might be wrong, but with any of it, do the best you can with what you chose. And maybe that sounds quite logical. I can promise you that I'm not unemotionless. That's not a word. I'm not unemotional. But
that's stuck. I take it back. I take it back. You're not unemotional.
This is obviously hit a real nerve, hasn't it? So I would say take the old in with the take the old, remember what you've done before. Control what you can control and do the next best thing. Make the best of what you do.
I love that. And I think I have a phrase often that I say, if I'm ever feeling regretful about a decision, what I end up often saying is, or my husband Joel will kind of say to each other is, well, you made the best decision with the information that you had at the time.
Yes. And that's
that
really
you had
important.
at the time. And if it was a different time, you might have made a different decision, or you had different factors that, we're both hitting our mic.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're totally right. You can only do the best with what you know at the time. And if there's subsequent information, you didn't have that at the time. And even if you did have the information, you could have made a better decision. Well, then, the best you can do is learn from it. None of us are perfect.
Yeah.
That's why I say it's so important. I've held this view for ages. It's like, do your best. You can't control what you can control. The outcome is not within your gift, often.
Such wisdom. And what about, it's so good. And I guess, what about then building trust with people as well? How do you do that? Maybe in high stakes situations, or someone's starting a new job, or whatever it is. How do you build trust with people quickly?
I think building trust is hard quickly because people are smart. They don't take one or two interactions to trust people rightly. I think trust is built by being clear on what you will do with people and then doing it.
Delivering on it.
And I used to be
integrity.
Yeah. And I used to be a secondary school teacher, and I was dreadful at my job when I started. And you'd say things to kids like, you say, you're in detention if you talk in class. Then 20 kids would talk and none of them would get detention. And you know exactly what happens next. And I had all the rules up on the wall, but that was irrelevant. Kids knew the rules on the wall were nothing to do with reality. Reality was, did I do what I said I would do? And in my second year in teaching, I came back and I had a sort of new improved policy. And the first kid that whispered in the class, I was like, in my 7 years of teaching, I have never seen a student do that. That is unbelievable. Out the class, your mum will be in, or your dad or whatever will be in tomorrow.
I'm scared.
It's unbelievable. How do you expect to learn in that kind of environment? Please leave. And then all the kids are like, oh my God, whispering in this class is quite a big deal. And you just push the expected behaviour right back to the front line again. Whereas previously I had kids leaving the room and jumping on tables and doing whatever they want. And I think if what you say you will do has to be backed up by what you actually do. And that's how you build trust.
So good.
Yeah. I think people are super smart. They realise that you either do what you say you'll do, or you don't do what you say you'll do. And ultimately that often comes down to key moments where it's difficult to stick by your values and do what you say you'll do. And people learn the most about trust in those situations because they're the easiest ones to just pull the cord and be like, no, actually, I'm going to deviate to what suits me at the time. It's something I tried really hard in the Traitors to do, is to stand by what I said and stay constant, because I could just tell that you watch that if people deviate from what they've said before or what their values were before, very quick way to get banished.
Yeah.
People pick it up really clearly. One other sort of bit, which I don't need to add, but it's important. I think people are super smart at working out your motives. If you don't believe this stuff, people work it out very quickly. You've actually got to believe it as well. That's the harder part. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, this is all so good. So good. Okay. I feel like we'll move on in a sec to your final what's it like. But I guess, is there any moment, I guess just to land on this, is there any moment in your diplomatic career that has shaped who you are today? And that you've kind of taken from that going forward?
I don't know about shaped me, but there's a couple of things that sort of stand out. There's sort of, I remember having to decide whether I'd go into a sort of a place that was sort of seeing active fighting about, 24, 48 hours before I went in, like an armoured convoy or whatever. You sort of body armour and the works. I guess I said the other day on the radio that I went to Nepal after an earthquake, and I was in a plane. Literally, there were just the two of us on it, coming out to help British nationals, and we landed on this sort of cracked runway in Nepal and went into the airport, and literally everyone in the airport was just completely packed. Just, you couldn't see the floor. People were just sort of lying all over the floor, sleeping on it, hoping to get out of the country, and we were coming in, and you sort of work your way through those sort of bodies to get out the other side. and then sort of, driving in through the streets where there's sort of people are sleeping in tents on the street because they'd rather not be in the buildings. Completely makes sense. And sort of went around the country trying to find how we could help. What else? Getting my car. Sorry, you asked for one thing, and I'm completely ad-libbing here. I got my car hit I was in Jordan at the time. I was traveling, and I had a whole load of friends in the car, and a lorry came up at like 60 miles an hour, and actually wrote off this huge gold Toyota Land Cruiser that I had, and it was a technical write-off. Like, it concertinaed the back of the car, and I was incredibly lucky because there were two people in the back who just got out to go to a bus stop or something.
Wow.
And we were sort of surrounded by all of these like locals who were just shouting in Arabic, and my friend started arguing, which is not super smart. And the policeman came, and he told me it was my fault, even though I got hit in the back of the car. And I said, no, it's definitely not my fault. And the guy awarded me, I think, $80 to repair my car, which I didn't take, thankfully, because the insurance therefore paid out. So to be clear, I didn't take it. Yeah.
Life tips: don't take the money.
Don't take $80 for a repair of a written off car. So these kind of experiences are kind of unusual to me, and there was the first time I'd ever come across stuff like that. So you really have to like adapt and learn into it. But I also love that kind of stuff. I actually work better, weirdly, under a lot of time pressure than I do with like ages and ages to think. I'm not at my best when I have ages to think. I get too sort of analytical.
Well, it's good. That's probably good for your occupation.
Yeah,
for that occupation.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. All right, let's do your next. What's it like?
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I think, I've needed like an Alexander book of wisdom really to carry around my life
I don't
with
think anyone
me.
wants that book.
We do. We need that book. But we have the podcast. We have the audio version. So your next What's It Like is what's it like to have a brother with special needs?
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us about your brother?
Yeah, he was awesome. I mean, I would say, lots of people are awesome, but my brother was super awesome to me. And to lots of people, he was like this sort of bright, shining star, and he just made everywhere he went, he lit up rooms. People would just sort of gravitate towards him. I've said before, but I used to do, for 5 years, I did these MenCap holidays where I was a carer for a week, but my brother would be at the holiday and he would be cared for by other people, but I was always in the background just in case he needed me, but I was looking after other kids. And we'd arrive and we'd both get out of the car or whatever, and he'd just like run off, and there'd be like 20 carers just like over the moon to see him, like screaming and like jumping in the air, and there's me just standing there like a lemon while my super cool, super cool brother just runs off. And so he just sort of had this personality which just people gravitated towards him. And
were you older?
I was older, yeah, 7 years older.
7 years older.
7 years
and what was
older
his
than
name?
he was. James. Yeah. So he was such a happy guy, and we sort of, me and my family worked very, very hard to create this sort of theatre set, because the world is a tricky place for people with learning disabilities often, which it wasn't. And we created this theatre set where everything was okay. And as he got older, that got harder, actually. But I like to think he lived within that theatre set. He was definitely a very, very happy guy. Yeah.
And you just said life can be difficult for people with learning difficulties.
Yeah, it is.
Why? And what's been your experience of that?
I think society finds difference tricky. I think that's true for all of us. There's literally zero like judgment in that. I think it's just true. People find difference tricky. And it's not something a lot of people come into contact with on a daily basis. And people with learning disabilities often do present as different. It's really common. 1.5 million people have learning disabilities, I think, in the UK. And once you start talking to people, it's incredible how many people are like, oh, yeah, my cousin has this, or my sister is this, or whatever. And actually, I did some calls recently with people who amazingly have donated to the cause following the show. And talking to them about their experiences, it's so connective. And you talk about how you can build trust quickly. Maybe that is a shortcut if you have a really intense shared experience, like being on the Traitors, or like having a special needs sibling.
100%.
And you're like, oh yeah, I get it. And I was talking to people and they'd say things like, I don't talk to my friends about this, but yeah, that's exactly what it's like. And let me tell you this. And you're like, this is nuts. I'm talking to you for 15 minutes over video link. And again, there's somebody with a camera in the corner. But it's just so connective.
Because what you're speaking to there is this idea that you know, in this huge world with 8 billion people, or is it 7? I don't know. But it's a
don't know.
huge world. And we all go through things. We're all going to go through things, and you're never alone.
Yeah.
And you're never alone. And I think when you find someone else that has been through something similar to you,
Absolutely
you realise
right.
that I'm not the only one.
Yes. Yes.
And that isolation that can come from those experiences really gets massively reduced, if not eliminated.
Couldn't
because
agree more.
there's someone else that can come alongside and say, hey, I've been there. Let me show you the path. Let me walk it with you. Or I'm ahead. Let me show you the light on that path.
I completely agree. And jumping back to the previous segment, apologies, I used to do this sort of assessment for people who'd been through really difficult periods. And that's not really an assessment in the way you think of it. It's a structured conversation where you chat to people about their incredibly difficult experience. They've just been through a bombing or something, or a natural disaster. And the point is, why am I going in? Because I'm not psychologically trained, right? The answer is, it's much more effective. This comes out of what the Marines used to do. I understand what that person's going through. I know what their life is like. I am a peer. And that's actually turns out to be hugely more, or a lot more effective at supporting people, because you have that shared understanding and people open up to you much more quickly than sending in somebody with a sort of, quote, quote, white coat.
Yeah.
Weird, right? You'd have thought somebody sort of trained to be better at that. Turns out, no. A peer is. And I think it's exactly your point that there is a enormous power in a shared connection. And I think, a lot of what MenCap do is setting people up with others who've been through that experience. It's better than professional support. Well, better, but I don't know. I'm sure there's times when professional support is better, but I'm not the expert here. But I think you're absolutely right.
And I'm going to ask you more about MenCap in a sec. But, for you then, what was it like growing up with a brother that had special needs?
I think it's awesome and also challenging, isn't it? And that's true for my parents as well, by the way. Everybody has to bend in some way. And often that bending is quite significant. I think of it like a sort of iron girder, and it really takes, it's a lot of heat and pressure, and it will bend.
Yeah. Can you give an example of that?
I mean, for my parents, they'd have to cook a similar meal every day for years. They would have to sort out my brother's clothes or whatever, he didn't have whatever, but there's a lot of, they would have to do the same sort of things day after day after day. And none of them signed up for that, right? That is not the life that they intended to put all of their energy into supporting my brother, which is pretty much what it takes with a family with somebody with a significant learning disability. The entire family has to pretty much put that first all the time. There's not really much deviation from that. And no one, quote, quote, signs up to it. I don't know if that needs quotes, whatever. But, but they do it, and they do it brilliantly, and they do it without ever asking for thanks, and they do it for love. That's enormously powerful. There are so many people out in Britain and across the world who do this stuff for love, just because. And it's not like the state provides a huge amount of support to them. It's just that they do it because they're a carer, and being a carer is not easy. And so, to the extent that it's connective, sharing my experience, I've heard from lots, people message me or whatever, and they say, that really resonates. That's kind of my experience. And if that's a sort of positive that comes from the show, then that is, man, it's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant one. Because I know what people put in. For me personally, as a brother, I probably became more grown up, or had to, it was sort of needed to grow up a little quicker than I would have done. I was part of the solution, the sort of home team.
Support team.
Yeah. You're part of the solution. And there's not really space to become a problem. And a lot of, I don't know, whatever, young children can be a problem. Of course they can, and as they perfectly reasonably should be. There's not a lot of space for that. And so you kind of grow up a little quicker, and that has positives, and it also has challenges. And you kind of work those out a little later in life, maybe. So certainly I'm still working some of that out. Basically, it's a huge privilege. I became, to the extent I am, the person I am now because of that. It's quite a hot sort of furnace, and it forges you. But it also comes with some costs as well. And I as I say, that's entirely true for my parents. It's true for a lot of people across the UK. I could have run off in a tangent now. I don't know where I'm going.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you was, and I think you're kind of touching on it there, but maybe you can distill it into like a couple of things, but it's so evident that it has given you so much. And I think it's so amazing and healthy to be talking in a space where you're actually saying this has been a privilege in your life.
Yeah,
because that is something I don't
both.
think people would look at and go, oh, that's a privilege.
Oh yeah, of course it is. I was so lucky because not only the relationship with my brother it was incredibly close. You know, like a couple of weeks before he died, we spent the weekend together, and I was driving him to Tesco, which he loved, and he, you know, he was a big fan of pizza and curry, but he didn't actually like pizza. He liked the fact that he thought he liked. He liked the fact that other people like pizza, but he didn't like himself. So we'd buy a curry and put it on top of the pizza, and then he'd eat the curry from the top of the pizza, and we'd have pizza. Makes no sense. Anyway, and on the journey up there, he's like, Alex, yeah, we like two brothers. And I'm like, yeah, we very much are. And we had this incredibly sort of close relationship, and I miss that enormously. Because he's just the coolest guy ever for me. And alongside that, I really miss the purpose, because I knew what I was on the planet for. A lot of people don't have this. They're not sort of, quote, I've got to stop doing that. That's getting annoying. They're not fortunate enough to have a purpose built into their life, but I did. I knew that my parents would get old. My parents doing an amazing job, but they would eventually get old, and I would become his carer. And more than that, I would become his protector. And that was my purpose in life. Like, there was nothing more important to me. And I had to become Superman, like literally impregnable, to make sure that he'd be okay. And whatever it took, I would become impregnable. Like, whatever the situation, I would be able to rise to it. And then when he died at 17, I didn't have to be that guy anymore. It wasn't needed. And that's such a weird shift, isn't it? Because you know everything, you know, your entire purpose on the planet, and then you don't. And I'd put all this effort into, you know, I don't know, going and working in a school with a sort of full-time policeman, and, you know, really tricky kids, you know, sort of like knife crime and something like 80% sort of free school meals, which is often an indicator of social deprivation in a school. And I, you know, joined the Foreign Office and worked in these incredibly or quite difficult places. And these are challenges I sort of set myself. And I think a lot of it stemmed from that desire to be sort of capable, and that I don't need to be that person anymore. And it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird because I still have that chip, but I don't need it.
Finding that identity.
Yeah.
Yeah. When your identity's been a carer, a supporter.
Hard. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's both. I miss the relationship, but I miss the relationship, and I miss the purpose. It's tricky.
Wow. Thank you for sharing.
Huh?
Mencat.
You just charge for therapy. You should.
I should.
I'll pay you. Yeah, I'll pay you on the way out.
Mencat. I'm going to let you tell me more, but from my understanding, Mencat are there to really support families through.
Yeah. And you know, one of my experience is one of the groups that ran this summer camp where it gave my parents a week off a year, and often that's massive for parents. Just 1 week off a year. It gives them a chance to be able to do the things they, you know, just for 1 week of the year, to put themselves first. And that sounds a bit glib, but it's huge, really.
Yeah. And that's what they do, Mencat.
Well, sorry, that's the experience I had.
Yeah.
Where I was also a carer on it. Mencap do loads more. Mencap do services for people, making people's lives easier, both for those with learning disabilities and their carers and people around them. They do awareness raising and political lobbying for the things that matter most. And they also do a range of other stuff, which I should probably know. Yes.
Do you know their website?
I do. I assume it's Mencap. The tragedy is I should have come with a little speaking note, because by the time this goes out, I will hopefully have.
Well, we can put out anything in the notes after.
Yeah, I'll hopefully have a more clear role by the time this comes out, which I can't say now. But by the time this comes out, it'll be obvious. Anyway,
you're Mr. Mysterious,
I know.
Alexander.
I'm mysterious on the thing that I'm meant to be best at. This is appalling. They'll kill me for this. But anyway, they do an amazing job.
Wow.
And I would love to do anything I can to raise awareness and raise money for the cause. And also, it's tough because lots of people who have people with learning disabilities in their family are so busy caring or so busy doing their daily life.
Yeah.
It's really hard to also speak out. And I have a relatively fortunate position that I can speak out, and that the show was, was well received. And if I can do anything to use that platform to speak out, that is one of the highest honours that I could get, right? So great.
Wow. We will pop their website at the end of this podcast so people do go and check them out. I always think if you know someone as well that a family, a friend, or someone in your life that is supporting someone with special needs, or someone with special needs, it's always worth, I think, sending these resources and these links to people that you know, because I remember my husband had cancer.
I'm sorry.
He's okay. We're 5 years all clear. But after he had cancer, we found Maggie's, who are one of our charity partners, and they're these like beautiful cancer centres built next to NHS hospitals. I remember walking in and being like, I never knew about this, and I wish I'd known. So I guess my encouragement to anyone listening is, if you know someone that would be massively blessed and benefited by this incredible charity, MenCap, then it takes 2 seconds to just send a link to say, maybe check these guys out, because a lot of people might not know they exist.
Absolutely.
So please do that.
Absolutely. And it kind of comes back to our point about, peer support, as in there are there's networks all over the place, which can be helpful as well as services. Yeah.
Well, actually on that, and we're kind of coming to a close, but two final questions for you. What would you want to say to people supporting or caring for someone right now? And how could people better support carers better?
Oof. Goodness, they're big questions for a speedy answer.
30 seconds speedy answer.
So the first one is, what would I say to carers? The second one is, what support can people provide to them? I suppose to carers, I everybody's sort of shape of their caring is different, right? What they do is different. So I can't begin to speak for however many million people in the UK do that. I might recognise the size of it as opposed to the shape. And it's big. It's really tough. I suspect for many, it's a mix of rewarding and also very, very tough. And the more that those voices can be heard, the better. Because it's often the small things that make a huge difference, like recognition, like what an amazing job people are doing, or, small things like a week off a year, or even even an afternoon off or whatever, that make such a big difference, because we're all emotional, sort of humans at heart, and these things make a big difference. It's not all about sort of, this big service or whatever, although it absolutely can be. And then support to them. I think it's a mix. People need the specific services to make their lives easier. That's things like, it can be things like home adaptation. It can be things like making sure the education system works for people with learning disabilities, making sure transport works for people with learning disabilities, these kind of things. And I think it's also a societal thing, when your kid or your brother or a family member or whatever has a meltdown at the checkout in Tesco's. That happens. And if people can just sort of, instead of, there's some people do, and it's very natural to sort of flip to judgment, instead just go, yeah, okay, that's just part of the spectrum of human experience. Some humans are born with different skills and abilities, and this is this one. Okay, cool. We'll just let this play out, give the parent a bit of space. Parent will know what to do, parent will manage. Someone, give a bit of a helping hand if needed, or a nice word or something. Great. And we can all move on. So some of it is the services, some of it is the sort of just societal attitudes, I think. It's a mix of those things. But it all comes down to, just trying to erode those differences a little bit. Not easy.
Alexander, you are a true public servant. I know you're very humble, so you won't like me saying it. But you really are. I'm just sat here so grateful that you were put on the planet, and really quite moved by your conviction and the way that you have a purpose to serve others, and it feels like you genuinely lay your life down to, whether it's serve your brother or serve your country. It's honestly been a privilege to talk to you today and be like, wow, this is a guy who is true goodness. And
you overplay that.
Wow. No, but in this world, it's rare and it's beautiful. And It's a wonderful thing to know that you exist.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me on.
You have one final opportunity, and that is there anyone that you would like to recognise?
I feel after this chat, I'll recognise my brother rather than drag anybody else into it. But yeah, he's a brilliant human being. And also, I feel like if there is a reason to talk about him and my relationship to him publicly, this is the best one, because I hope it'll make life a little easier for other people as well. My brother, when we were trying to convince him to give something away, because it's tricky, and like, you know, it's, I don't know, a toy or something that was sort of didn't need anymore, and the way to do it was to say, you know, but you know, actually another young boy would really love this, and he'd be, oh yeah, other boy love this, yeah, and that was the key to getting it donated to charity or whatever. And I love that he always had that sort of desire to make other people's lives a bit better. And I love that. And I think if his memory is in service of making other people's lives a little easier, a little better, then that's brilliant.
Oh, we recognise.
Sorry,
James.
now we've
Thank you for
left it on a
no,
sort of
it's
a
so
maudlin
good.
note. I should
It's not.
Just leave it on a you know, tell a joke or something. That would
It's
feel
real. No,
inappropriate, but
let's
whatever.
not ruin
You get the
it.
idea.
It's great. Alexander, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the Recognise What's It Like podcast. We hope this chat has brought you hope and connection, has left you feeling inspired, and above all, has made you feel seen, valued, and recognised to the core. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.